August 26, 1346. The rain-soaked fields near the village of Crécy in northern France were alive with tension. On one side, 9,000 weary English soldiers huddled together, soaked to the bone, their spirits tested by weeks of campaigning. On the other, 30,000 of Europe's finest knights, heavy cavalry gleaming, the proud nobility of France ready to crush them. The French army seemed unstoppable. Knights in full-plate armor, mounted on massive, top-armored horses, each weighing nearly a ton, dominated the field. Nobles argued over who would earn the glory of slaying Edward III himself. For centuries, mounted knights had ruled European battlefields. Infantry were tools, archers nuisances, and the roar of a cavalry charge decided wars. 4 hours later, the battlefield would tell a very different story. 1,500 French nobles lay dead, princes, dukes, kings, and the English had lost only 40 men. The age of knightly dominance was over, shattered by commoners wielding wood and string. Among the chaos, the blind King John of Bohemia rode straight into the storm of arrows, determined to die honorably. The French knights, panicked, even crushed their own men as they fled. Genoese crossbowmen, hired to support the French, were slaughtered by the very nobles who commanded them. For weeks afterward, crows feasted so greedily on noble flesh they could hardly lift from the ground. This was Crécy, the day medieval warfare died in the mud. The idea that nobility alone granted battlefield supremacy was destroyed by disciplined, skilled archers. By the end of this documentary, you'll understand how a weapon worth 10 shillings destroyed armor priced at £1,000, why French knights turned on their own mercenaries mid-battle, and how a blind king's doomed charge became one of the most tragically noble deaths in history. Edward III of England had recently landed in Normandy with 15,000 men, pressing his claim to the French throne through his mother. His forces carved a path across northern France in a campaign of plunder designed to expose the French king's inability to defend his lands. After looting towns and burning villages, the English began a retreat toward Calais, only to be intercepted by the largest army France had ever raised. Philip VI of France commanded 30,000 to 35,000 men, including 12,000 heavy cavalry. Every great French noble attended, alongside allied princes and monarchs from across Europe, contingents from the Holy Roman Empire, the King of Bohemia, knights from Moravia. A medieval Avengers assemble, united by one goal: English blood. But Edward had one advantage the French overlooked. 5,000 longbows, peasants and criminals trained from childhood, were underestimated by the French. English law required archery practice every Sunday. These archers wielded a 6-foot yew longbow, capable of firing 12 arrows per minute, striking targets over 250 yards away. Their skeletons, warped by years of strain, testify to their deadly skill. Edward positioned his army on high ground, forcing the French to attack uphill. He divided his men into 3 lines, archers forming a V-shaped defense for overlapping fields of fire. Then, in a move that shocked Europe, he ordered English knights to dismount and fight as infantry. Pride clashed with survival, but only the living would keep their honor. That night, the English camp was eerily calm. Archers tended their bows, rubbing beeswax on strings to repel moisture. Trenches were dug, stakes hammered into the ground. Edward even distributed meat and ale, ensuring his men slept full, while the French struggled after a forced march. The contrast was clear: discipline versus arrogance. Across the valley, French chaos hid behind glittering armor and banners. Dukes and counts bickered over who would lead the charge or seize Edward for ransom. Philip VI's attempts at order were drowned out by horns, drums, and vanity. It resembled a tournament more than an army ready for battle. As dawn broke, the French vanguard advanced through smoldering villages and ash-laden fields. Peasants cursed their homes destroyed by the English. For the French nobility, the devastation demanded vengeance. For Edward, it was proof his plan worked. He had turned France itself into a weapon.
Before we continue, if you're still here, you're officially part of the 1% who enjoys history told the way it actually happened. Raw, dramatic, and without the boring textbook fluff. So do me one favor, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the rest of this series. Drop a like if you want YouTube to push documentaries like this to more people. And in the comments, tell me, should we cover Agincourt or Poitiers next? Because Crécy is only the beginning. The next chapter of this story is where everything gets even crazier. The moment when the French charge straight into a death trap of their own making. All right, back to the battlefield.
Rain pounded the field, turning the ground to mud. The Genoese crossbowmen, 5,000 of Europe's most elite mercenaries, advanced without pavises, their shields still trapped in the baggage train. Their strings, soaked by the storm, hung slack and useless. They marched forward bravely, unaware that the English longbowmen had been carefully prepared for this very moment. At 150 yards, the Genoese loosed their first volley. Most bolts fell short, harmless against the disciplined English lines. Then came the reply. 5,000 English longbows sang together, a thunderous roar described by contemporaries as the voice of the storm itself. Each archer released 12 arrows per minute, raining 60,000 shafts every 60 seconds. The sky darkened beneath the hail of yew wood and iron. The Genoese were unprotected, exposed. Their crossbows took half a minute to reload, compared to the longbow's 5 seconds. Panic struck. They broke, fleeing toward their own lines. But madness followed. French knights, enraged by the retreat, spurred forward, cutting down their own mercenaries in blind fury. Nobles slaughtered their allies for failing to die quickly enough. Few survived. Those who did cursed their employers, abandoning the field. The first true assault began. 12,000 mounted French knights thundered uphill, mud sucking at hooves, arrows slicing through the soft flesh of horses' eyes, mouths, and joints. Horses reared, screamed, and collapsed, forming walls of fallen animals that halted those behind them. Knights crashed into the chaos, their charge losing all momentum. At closer range, English archers unleashed bodkin-tipped arrows, piercing weak points in armor, through visors, joints, and gauntlets. Even when the arrows did not penetrate, their impact shook men like dice in a cup, rattling the courage from even the most seasoned knight. Wave after wave of French nobility surged forward, climbing over their own dead, only to fall to the relentless English fire. The English had prepared the terrain meticulously. Hidden pits and sharpened stakes broke horses' legs, turning the battlefield into a killing ground. Mud clung to armor, making recovery impossible. Knights trapped under 60 pounds of steel became immobile targets. And then, in a moment that would echo through history, the blind King John of Bohemia entered the fray. Blind for nearly a decade, he refused to flee. Tied to his loyal knights to guide his horse, he charged into the storm of arrows, sword swinging at sound and shadow. He and his companions were cut down instantly, but his valor became legend. Edward III's son, the Black Prince, later adopted King John's emblem, 3 ostrich feathers, as the symbol of the Prince of Wales, with the motto, Ich dien, I serve. By late afternoon, the French had mounted 16 separate charges, each wave more chaotic than the last, discipline eroded by impatience and vanity. Desperate nobles fought to reach the front for glory, only to sink into the mud beside their fallen comrades. Even Philip VI was wounded. An arrow through the jaw sent him retreating,
his guards dragging him from the field. The sacred oriflamme, France's battle banner, lay abandoned in the mud. As night fell, the English had exhausted their arrows, but the work was not done. Archers and infantry turned to knives, mallets, and wooden stakes, slaughtering the wounded French. Peasant archers, ordinary men trained by law and necessity, became executioners of noble blood. By dawn on August 27th, the scale of the massacre was clear. 1,500 nobles were dead, 11 princes, thousands of knights, and countless Genoese mercenaries. English losses totaled just 40 men, a staggering ratio, 1 English knight for every 750 French nobles. Medieval warfare had been rewritten in mud and blood. The longbow had rendered heavy cavalry obsolete, and the illusion of nobility as divine battlefield authority was shattered. The battlefield was a nightmare of mud, steel, and screams. The French nobility, blinded by pride, repeatedly charged the English lines, wave after wave, each more desperate than the last. Horses sank in the sticky soil. Knights struggled to rise from the corpses of their comrades. The thunder of hooves was drowned by the unrelenting storm of longbows. English archers, positioned on high ground and behind pits and stakes, rained arrows with deadly precision. Bodkin-tipped shafts struck the horses first, toppling their riders. Arrows found every gap in armor, visors, armpits, joints, and the soft flesh beneath. Even the proud mounted knights, trained for decades, became nothing more than targets in the mud, their silver and gold armor glinting uselessly beneath the rain. French commanders tried to rally their men, but discipline was collapsing. Dukes and counts, impatient for personal glory, charged independently, trampling their own infantry and mercenaries. The Genoese who had survived the first onslaught were cut down by their employers, a horrifying display of arrogance and chaos. Chroniclers later described the scene as a noble mob galloping to self-destruction. In the center of the carnage, Edward III remained calm. He observed his men, steady and disciplined, moving with the precision of an army that knew its advantage. Every arrow loosed, every pit dug, every sharpened stake played its part. The English had turned the mud into a weapon, the longbow into a harvester of death. The blind King John of Bohemia had been the first of many legendary figures to fall. Others followed, nobles who sought glory at any cost. Waves of knights climbed over bodies only to collapse themselves. By nightfall, the French army was exhausted, demoralized, and shattered. Yet the battle did not stop. French knights continued their futile charges through the darkness, the sound of clashing steel and dying horses echoing across the field. The English, almost untouched, maintained their lines, pulling arrows from corpses to keep the assault under control. The peasants, hardened by law-mandated archery practice, wielded bows and stakes with ruthless efficiency. The psychological impact on the French nobility was profound. Their belief in divine right and invincibility was shattered. Kings, princes, and dukes fell indiscriminately, chivalric ideals drowned in mud. For the English, the battle had become not only a military triumph, but a symbol of strategy and discipline triumphing over arrogance and tradition. By the end of Part 3, the stage was set. French forces were in disarray, morale broken, and the once proud nobility facing the horrifying reality that their wealth and armor could not save them from a storm of arrows and mud. The battle would continue into the night, sealing the fate of medieval armored dominance. As night approached, the battlefield had become a chaotic graveyard of mud, shattered armor, and the dying cries of men and horses. Yet the French nobility, driven by desperation and pride, continued their last-ditch charges. Their discipline had evaporated. Each assault was a reckless surge, noble lords pushing themselves forward in a frantic attempt to reclaim honor. Edward III's army remained calm and coordinated. Every archer knew their mark. Every stake was in place. Even the rain-soaked earth worked in their favor, turning the charging horses into immobile targets. The longbow had become an unstoppable force. Arrows flew like storms, piercing the soft spots in armor, felling knights before they could strike. The famous Count de Lancin, who had earlier ordered the slaughter of his own Genoese mercenaries, was now a victim of the chaos he had helped create. Nobles fell over one another, trapped in a web of mud, bodies, and sharpened stakes. Horses screamed, floundering in the mire, their riders crushed beneath them. The glory they sought was replaced by gruesome death and humiliation. Amid the carnage, Edward III moved along his lines, ensuring order. His Black Prince, observing the battlefield, learned the full scope of disciplined strategy versus reckless valor. Every charge of the French cavalry had diminished their numbers and morale, leaving the nobility exhausted, defeated, and demoralized. The blind king of Bohemia had already fallen earlier, but his legend remained, symbolizing the end of chivalric honor. By nightfall, the repeated French assaults had utterly failed, leaving behind a scene of devastation, shattered banners, broken lances, and the glittering remnants of a nobility slaughtered in the mud. As darkness fell, the English did not pursue further. Their strategy had succeeded. They had turned arrogance into a weapon against the French, proving that discipline, preparation, and tactical innovation could overcome sheer numbers and noble pride. The battlefield, littered with the bodies of over 1,500 nobles and thousands of knights, was a grim testament to the death of medieval armored dominance. Edward III's victory was not just military, but symbolic. It shattered the illusion of invincible mounted knights, forever changing the face of warfare in Europe. The once feared French nobility had been humbled, their pride washed away in the rain and mud of Crécy. The English had proven that skill, strategy, and patience could triumph over arrogance and wealth, heralding the rise of disciplined infantry and ranged combat as the new standard of war. The battlefield lay in eerie silence. Smoke and fog drifted over the fallen. The English, battered but triumphant, held the field, while the French nobility faced a catastrophic loss that would echo across Europe for generations.
The sun rose over the mud-soaked fields of Crécy, revealing a scene of unimaginable devastation. Thousands of French nobles lay dead, their gleaming armor tarnished by blood and rain. The once proud banners of France were torn, trampled, or abandoned in the mud, and the battlefield reeked of death, horses, and rotting flesh. The English army, despite exhaustion, held its formation. Their victory was complete, but not without cost. The strain on men and resources was immense. Yet the imbalance in losses was staggering. 40 English dead versus over 1,500 French nobles, countless knights, and their mercenaries. For every English knight that fell, 750 French nobles had perished. Crécy was more than a military triumph. It was a cultural and societal shockwave. The age of mounted chivalry, the idea that noble blood guaranteed battlefield superiority, had crashed into the mud and rain of northern France. Peasant archers, once considered inconsequential, had reshaped the rules of warfare. Discipline, strategy, and technology had triumphed over wealth and prestige. The aftermath rippled across Europe. France faced a leadership vacuum.
Provinces lost their lords, and military hierarchies were shaken. Nobles questioned their status, realizing that skill and preparation now outweighed inherited honor. England, on the other hand, emerged with a new military reputation. Its longbowmen feared across the continent. The battle also transformed the nature of combat. Cavalry charges were no longer guaranteed victories. Infantry formations, long-range weapons, and coordinated tactics became essential. The psychological impact on the French nobility was devastating. The illusion of divine protection and superiority was shattered. Historically, Crécy marked the beginning of the 100 Years' War, setting the stage for decades of conflict between England and France. It foreshadowed the shift from medieval to modern warfare, where strategy, discipline, and innovation determined the outcome of battles, not just brute strength or noble lineage. Legends emerged from the battlefield. The blind king of Bohemia, tied to his horse and companions, epitomized doomed valor. Edward III and the Black Prince demonstrated that leadership and foresight could defy overwhelming odds. Chroniclers would forever mark Crécy as the day chivalry died and the longbow reigned supreme. By the end, the fields of northern France were littered with the ghosts of a world that no longer existed. The English returned home, victorious, their strategy and discipline cementing their place in history. The French rebuilt, but the lessons of Crécy echoed for generations. Armor could not save arrogance, and nobility alone could not secure victory. As we look back over the muddy slopes, the shattered banners, and the storm of arrows that once rained on knights and peasants alike, we understand why Crécy remains a defining moment in military history. It is a story of courage, innovation, and the relentless power of preparation, a battle where the underdog rewrote the rules forever. As the dust settles over the battlefield of Crécy and the echoes of arrows fade into history, we're left with a powerful lesson. Preparation, discipline, and courage can topple even the mightiest armies. If you've been captivated by this story of valor, strategy, and the fall of medieval chivalry, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more epic historical documentaries, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a journey into the past. Share your thoughts in the comments. Which moment from Crécy shocked you the most? Was it the relentless power of the longbow, the bravery of the blind king of Bohemia, or the chaos of the French cavalry? And if you're fascinated by history's bloodiest battles, join our community where we explore the stories that shaped the world, one epic clash at a time. Watch, learn, and step back into history with us.